Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are all having a great start to your year so far. So in this video we will be creating a very unique wintry sort of cabin mansion within The Sims 4, and since we're pretty much in the middle of winter, I feel like it kind of made sense and inspired me to create a unique build like this within The Sims 4. And you might be noticing that we're actually building in granite floors, and this is mainly because I wanted to create it as like some sort of vacation lot. However, you guys can also just use it as a general residential lot wherever you guys want to place it, and especially since it's a 50 by 40 lot, I believe you guys could pretty much place it on any single lot that is like a sizable amount, if that makes sense. So you don't really have to worry about it being too big or too small, or like utilizing that 64 by 64 size, which I know can be a bit too huge and overwhelming at certain times. I feel like this build turned out pretty amazing, and it's a very huge and generous home, so you will have a bunch of space and like a lot of bedrooms and whatnot to like pretty much like house anything that you pretty much want to place into here. It's easily renovatable to be turned into like a general home if you guys do prefer to utilize this build in that way. But I feel like it just like really resembles a very nice modern and futuristic looking cabin mansion in my opinion. And we're actually starting off by creating this very unique lake that we have at the front of the home, which I feel like looks super cool and sort of just like houses the back garden area of the home very nicely, and sort of just like secludes it in its like own area, which I feel like makes it look super interesting. And just to add on top of that, I wanted to actually create a leveled sort of lake sort of area which has this very nice fake waterfall effect that goes down into like the main part of the lake, or like pond. I don't know if it's big enough to be called a lake, but I feel like it kind of just like makes sense, especially because it's sort of just like out in the wilderness around all of these pine trees and whatnot around it. I just feel like it looks super interesting, and I feel like this is like the perfect location for creating these very secluded sort of mansions and cabins and stuff like that, if that makes sense. So yeah, I really do hope you guys do enjoy this build as much as I did creating it, and yeah, I just hope you guys like enjoy playing in it and whatnot. In terms of like creating the outer shell of it, we actually do have 3 different stories for this build in particular. So you'll see me adjusting and just like changing a lot of the roofing as well as like a lot of the rooms and stuff like that, just to make it feel a bit more realistic and cabiny, because I didn't want to stick to all of those boring rectangular shapes and stuff like that. But we do actually end up changing parts of the home to incorporate those specific functionalities, which you would see as we progress through on the video. But so far we're just creating some outer shells and layers and whatnot, and I didn't really have any specific reference images to go off of, so I'm kind of just like playing around with it and adjusting as I go, just to see like what I feel like fits and what works. And I feel like I kind of came up with like a really interesting shape for the front of the home. And I feel like since we did go down and like manipulated the terrain to being like below the lot level, I feel like it made it look super interesting, especially with those rocks around the edges of the lake, which I feel like makes it feel a bit more secluded, as I mentioned earlier in the video. It just makes it look super interesting and just like a very nice vacation home, or a general home if you guys are planning to use that. But yeah, it's a very huge house. I feel like it just houses quite a lot of rooms, and I just feel like I don't know who needs this many rooms, but I feel like it's just like the perfect size if you have like a very huge legacy family, or if you want to create some sort of secretive vault underneath and stuff like that, because it does have like a basement sort of level. And yeah, you guys could pretty much like utilize it as whatever you guys want to utilize it as, and it just has this very nice cozy sort of cabin feel, and it kind of just like comes together, as you guys would see like later in the video, with like the different colors that I pick and stuff like that. It just all works really nicely together. There is a common theme and texture of like this like very nice wooden texture going on throughout the entire home, whether it's on the exterior or the interior, but I feel like it ties the entire home really nicely together, and it just makes it look super interesting. And I was actually really happy with the simple process that I had with the roofing, so I just kept most of that in, as I do usually cut those parts out since I don't really think it's that interesting. But for this house in particular, I felt like it kind of made sense to sort of just like leave it in, especially since we have like these very unique sort of triangular end pieces on parts of the homes that poke out, and I feel like it was kind of like a unique way of showcasing how I sort of just like fulfill or like cover those areas of the home, if that makes sense. And I was really happy with how the exterior of the home looked at this moment in time, so I just was like really happy with continuing on with it, and I just feel like it turned out super nice. And yeah, it just looked really appealing to the eye, like in my opinion, especially with that very nice bright orange that we have going around each of the roof trims. It just makes the home stand out a lot nicer, and it sort of just like matches that orangey sort of wooden theme that we do have going on throughout pretty much the entire home, whether it's on the interior or the exterior. And yeah, it just feels super nice and interesting in my opinion. And I just added these very nice metal sort of roof sort of edge pieces, if that makes sense, like wall pieces, just to like add some sort of support to the home, as well as like some additional columns here and there. Even though it doesn't really require it, I feel like it kind of made sense just to like add to that sort of realism that I was trying to go for. And we actually utilized quite a lot of snowy escape in this build in particular, mainly because they have a lot of those sort of like cold climate sort of furniture pieces and just like a lot of nice environmental pieces and stuff like that I feel like kind of makes sense and works with a build like this in particular. So we really wanted that sort of snowy cabin theme, and the way we could sort of like get that without having snow 24/7 in the game is just by utilizing those snowy escape rocks and some of those fake sort of snow piles that came from that pack as well, which I feel like is super handy when it comes to sort of just like faking that really nice snow effect. And I was really happy with how I was able to sort of just like clump a bunch of like these fake rocks together, and by utilizing the tool mod as well to just like adjust all of the rocks into place and position however I wanted them to look. And it sort of just like came together and made it look super realistic, as if it was like some sort of built-in sort of lake, and then like the owners of the home sort of just like placed a very nice huge mansion on top of it and just like sort of included the environment around the home, which I feel like makes it look super interesting, because usually you're sort of just like looking up towards the home, but this one is sort of just like eye level and it instead just like goes down into the lot, but it doesn't really look that obvious that it is like that, and it just makes the home look a lot more interesting than my other regular usual homes in my opinion. And yeah, I'm just really happy with how this one turned out in particular, because it has this very unique shape to it, and yeah, as I mentioned in earlier, like it just appeals to the eye a lot in my opinion, because it just has these very nice distinctive features and just like a lot of colors that stand out, which I feel like make it look really unique. And I also utilize a bunch of different rocks and stuff like that rather than like repeating the same pattern and stuff. And even in areas where I did use that like very long rock texture with which had the snow on top of it, I still went back and just like added some additional smaller rocks and trees and stuff like that to cover pretty much all of the sides and like the replicated sort of areas of the rock like detailing around the lake, which I feel like made it look a lot more unique and interesting, and sort of just like added to that small realism that I was trying to go for, because I really do try to aim for like these like more realistic builds. And I even tried to like create like a bunch of like clustered rocks all together, as if it was like all placed like naturally there, if that makes sense, rather than it being like out of place and whatnot. And we do also go around the entire lot as well and just like add a bunch of greenery, a lot of like snowy trees and like pine cones and whatnot, just like a bunch of trees that sort of like fit in and make it look a bit more realistic. And we do also have a lot of like outdoor sort of exterior sort of balcony areas and sections for this home, whether it's on like the third floor, the first floor, or the second floor. We pretty much have locations that sort of like peek out from either side of the home, pretty much from any angle, and I just feel like that makes it look and feel just a bit more like vacation like, if that makes sense. It just like gives you the opportunity to look at all of the views and stuff like that, and yeah, it just feels just like a super modern luxurious cabin home that you would pretty much see in like a very expensive sort of mountain range, I guess. And yeah, that was sort of just like the goal that I was trying to go for. Since I was trying to go for a very modern theme, I didn't want to like sort of like clutter it up and like add a lot of like wooden pine cones and like a lot of wooden wood textures and stuff like that on top of like the walls and stuff. I wanted to keep it like very clear and simple, just like some very like modern wooden accents here and there, if that makes sense. So most of the house does actually remain like this like very nice white clear color with, and there's only that wooden wall texture on certain areas and parts of the home, which I feel like kind of made sense and sort of just like broke the illusion of it all being like repetitive, if that makes sense. And I was also playing around with a lot of the window frames as well, because I wanted this home to stick out, but I didn't want it to have like that very simple black and white theme that I'm usually like used to creating with. So instead, for this build in particular, we're using this very nice wooden sort of timber frame that goes on throughout pretty much all of the windows and glass doors and stuff like that, which I feel like make it look a lot more like luxurious and sort of just like fits the theme that I'm trying to go for. And since that black wooden frame around the windows was a bit too harsh, I didn't want to like utilize a lot of dark colors for this build in particular. So yeah, I was just pretty much happy with that very nice timber sort of frame that came with it. And I did also try to, as you guys can see, I did try to utilize some of the wooden textures for the wallpaper for the exterior. However, it just wasn't really working out that nice, and it was sort of just like making it look a little bit dull in my opinion. So instead I just like didn't want to utilize it in every part of the home, but rather in like certain sections and rooms that sort of poked out from the main home, if that makes sense. But yeah, I wanted to keep the main part of the home, which is like very nice 3-story living space, just like very nice white clear color, especially when it contrasts really nicely with the lake that is just like right in front of it. I just feel like it looks super interesting, especially when you add snow and stuff like that on top of this lot. It just makes it look and feel a bit more realistic, as if it's like this very nice modern winter mansion cabin, if that makes sense, and which is kind of just like the main goal that we were trying to go for. And I did also utilize a lot of the horse ranch sort of columns as well on either sides of the home as well, because I just feel like it kind of made sense, since that pack does come with a lot of these like wooden textures and stuff like that. So I feel like it kind of felt really appropriate to utilize a lot of the wooden beams and just like a lot of columns from that pack in particular. But yeah, moving on into the main living room area. As you guys can see, I'm just trying to pick out every single object that had this very nice orangey sort of wooden tone, if that makes sense, because I was trying to fit with the theme of it just being like very like natural, as if it was pretty much like all furniture that was possibly built from all of the wood around the entire environment of this home in particular, if that made sense, such as like from the pine trees and whatnot. But yeah, that was sort of just like the vision that I was trying to go for, and just like trying to make this mansion feel very natural and just like very modern as well at the same time. But I didn't want to like make it feel like very old and boring and just like use a lot of like these like dark brown dull colors. I was trying to go for like a very nice open vibrant modern theme, which is kind of just like evident by the objects that I'm actually picking out in particular right now. And even though we're going for a very modern theme, I wanted it to feel very extravagant and just like something that felt a bit more luxurious as well. So you would see certain elements of the home which incorporate these very nice fancy features that you wouldn't generally see in like these general sort of like cabin homes and mansions, if that makes sense. So yeah, this mansion in particular sort of houses this very luxurious and modern feel to it, if that makes sense. And we did also go with the very nice eco lifestyle timber flooring as well, because I just feel like those look really nice, and the colors within each of the sort of like tiles within the wood just like work really nicely with sort of just like matching it with the rest of the home without blending it in. It still sort of just like contrasts with the rest of the furniture pieces and objects that we have going on throughout the entire build as well. And I actually went with this very nice extravagant fireplace, which I feel like worked super nicely for this build in particular, because it had this very nice detailing on top of it. And I feel like for a cabin home like this, I feel like it kind of makes sense to have a very nice and cozy looking sort of fireplace rather than using like a very basic modern one. This one sort of just like felt like it was built in, and it just sort of like felt a bit more homey in my opinion, especially with the addition of that very nice coffee table, which is just like a bunch of these like wooden planks going across each other, and it just like worked super nicely. And with the addition of like that modernization of the home as well, you can see at the backside we have some very nice floating wooden cabinetry, which has like the same wood styling and textures, which came from the Dream Home Decorator expansion pack. And I just love utilizing that in pretty much most of the rooms that I've built within this entire build in particular. I used quite a lot of Dream Home Decorator. And we're actually moving on into the kitchen, which I just love the way it looks because of those three windows that are just like aligned very nicely together, and it just utilizes these very modern looking cabinets, which has this very nice interesting color scheme to it, which I feel like matches with the rest of the home very nicely. Starting off with the very nice black counters along with the very nice white countertops, as well as like those very nice orange handles. I just feel like it feels a bit futuristic in my opinion. Like I really do like the combination of all of these colors all together, and I just feel like it's like a unique color swatch that I can just like utilize in this build in particular. And a lot of the hardware and a lot of like the fixtures and stuff like that throughout this kitchen in particular has this very nice black theme going on, so I feel like it really matches and ties in really nicely together. And I even made sure that the sink actually was like focused and like was centered with the window, because I just feel like it looked really nice and just like felt really nice and realistic in my opinion. And yeah, just like also incorporated a very nice L-shaped island counter to it, and just like added some nice bar stools and stuff. Even though we do actually have a very spacious dining table right next to it, I just feel like it kind of made sense to just incorporate some additional seating area here and there, and just like made sure to add all the basic necessities that you would sort of just like expect in a kitchen, as well as housing a very nice coffee machine maker, and just like trying to make it look interesting by incorporating some accent walls on certain parts of the house that sort of just like poke in and out from either parts of like the rooms and whatnot, which I feel like made the rooms look a lot more dynamic rather than leaving every single room like this like very plain white wallpaper color, if that makes sense. And I just really love this one in particular, which came from the Book Nook kit, which I feel like looks super nice and modern, but still has that very nice wooden texture and theme that I was trying to like go for, since we did have quite a lot of that specific material going on throughout the entire home. And since we are going for a very modern sort of looking home, we don't really have a lot of sort of like closed off areas. This is a very open floor plan styled home, so yeah, there's just like a lot that goes into the thought process when creating the floor plan to make sure that every single room is like functional and is like appropriately like far away from the main areas of the home, and as well as like making sure that the openness of the home doesn't feel really empty and like secluded, so that it sort of just like feels as if like every part of the home has like a specific purpose, I guess, if that makes sense. So yeah, that was sort of just like the main goal that I was trying to go for, and I was really happy that I was able to achieve that with this build in particular, because I just feel like the interior turned out super nicely and it just works super nicely, and it's just like really cohesive with where I place all of the rooms and objects, and just like in general, in my opinion. And this is actually one of the main bathrooms that we have in the home in particular, which I just really loved how it turned out, mainly because I just really love utilizing those dream home decorator wall cabinetry units on either side of the sort of like floating sink area. And I feel like that always turns out really nice, and I just really love utilizing that sort of trick to make it feel like it's a bit more like luxurious and whatnot. And yeah, it just turned out really nicely, and I just utilized some simple toilet and a bathtub just to like house the basic necessities that you would see in a toilet, as well as just like creating a very nice accent wall and whatnot, which I feel like most of my bathrooms as well as like a lot of the bedrooms have, just so that like it creates some like uniqueness and just like makes it feel a bit more interesting, in my opinion. And this is actually one of the bedrooms that we have on the first floor, or I guess like the second floor of the home, which I just feel like turned out super amazing. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going for that very nice wooden cabiny sort of natural feel. So you would see a lot of these like furniture pieces that you would see that were most likely carved and like made out of wood, because that was sort of just like the textures that I was trying to go for and like utilize for this build in particular, because I wanted it to feel like very earthy and just like very natural. And yeah, I just feel like it turned out super nice, because I feel like this is already like how I like decorating in general anyway. So I just feel like it turned out really nice when it came to like utilizing those very modern and simplistic and very minimalistic looking objects, in my opinion. But yeah, I just use a bunch of different objects and stuff like that to clutter it up as much as possible. And I just really love how these parts of the house that overhang from like the main part of the home just like stand in front of that lake. It just makes it look super interesting, in my opinion, especially with having those very huge 4 windows, which I believe those windows did actually come from the Snowy Escape expansion pack, those basic like sort of square ones. And I just feel like it works super nicely within this build in particular, with creating a very unique and modern feel to it. And I just feel like this bedroom in particular just turned out very nice, mainly because I just spent so much time in it and just like tried to make it look very detailed, but also like keep into that minimalistic modern sort of style, if that makes sense. So I even like layered certain rugs on top of each other, which I feel like looked really interesting, which is something that I haven't really done before, but I feel like it turned out really nice, because it just like added that very nice contrast that that bed sort of really needed, especially since it had that very nice sort of like generic oak wood and like white colors to it. I really wanted to incorporate some darker features throughout parts of that bedroom in particular as well, which I feel like turned out really nice. And we do also have a very spacious office within this house in particular as well, and I really wanted to utilize those very nice sort of triangular cornered sort of window sections as like some sort of very nice sort of seating areas and stuff like that. And I just feel like it turned out super nicely, with sort of just like incorporating a nice cozy looking office within this room in particular. And I just really love those floor to ceiling windows that sort of just like meet in the middle of the actual like triangle area, which I feel like looks super interesting. And I haven't really done anything like that in particular in my previous builds either. I don't really utilize a lot of these like triangular sort of corner bits within my builds and stuff like that. I just feel like there's not really much to like do with them, if that makes sense. And I did actually incorporate some unique sort of designs and features in other rooms as well, which house those corner sections, which you would see later in the video. But I just feel like it turned out really nice and just like had this very nice dark brownish sort of design and feel to it for this office in particular. And I just really love how it turned out. And I did actually utilize quite a lot of the book nook wall that came from that kit as well, because I just really love how that sort of like wall accent looks in certain parts of the home. It just sort of like divides and breaks up that very plain and simple white wall that we have going on throughout the entire home. That really nice simple sort of like dark oak sort of wall texture paneling works super nicely with creating a very modern feel to the home, in my opinion, while also sticking to that cabin-esque sort of vibe that I was trying to still stick with, if that makes sense. And I did also want to create a very nice movie room in this sort of basement underground sort of like first floor sort of area of the home, which I feel like turned out super nice. And this isn't actually technically the basement, since we didn't actually go underground. We just moved the terrain downwards, if that makes sense. So yeah, if you guys do also want to incorporate a basement, you guys can also do that within the game as well, if you guys want to incorporate some additional stuff. But that first floor pretty much has quite a lot of space that I didn't really want to utilize, mainly because it didn't really have a lot of windows and stuff, and I just feel like it wouldn't really be that interesting. So yeah, if you guys do want to house like extra rooms and stuff like that, but don't want to ruin like the original sort of look and design of the home, you guys can feel free to just like add some additional rooms to the back area of this sort of like first floor area, and it would still pretty much like function the way you want it to with the additional rooms that you want to add. But yeah, we do also have a very nice sort of generic public sort of like main bathroom area on the first floor as well, because I realized that we didn't have one and it was only connected to the theater area, but then I ended up changing that into becoming a main sort of like main bathroom area, if that makes sense. And we do also have another one of these very nice sort of secluded bedrooms which look out from the sort of like these like very nice huge glass windows and doors. And I feel like in real life as well, they will also house these like very modern sort of small bedroom cabins with like these like very great views, and that was sort of just like what I wanted to do within this build in particular as well. So yeah, just like housing these very nice modern simple looking bedrooms with like these very huge windows and doors that like look out to these very detailed and extravagant views, if that makes sense. And I actually wanted to utilize the snowy escape bedside tables in this bedroom in particular as well, so we're actually using on a different side just to like make sure it fits in. And we're also utilizing the eco lifestyle single doors throughout the entire home as well, because I just feel like it looks super interesting, and it's kind of like a door that I don't really utilize in any of my builds, mainly because I don't really like the metal bits that sort of just like poke out from the entrance area of the door. So I feel like it just like kind of makes sense to just utilize the dream home decorator ones, but these ones felt really tall and extravagant, so I feel like it kind of just like made sense to utilize those in this home in particular. And yeah, we do also actually have another living space on the first floor as well, which is pretty much like just below the main one, but we don't actually focus too much on it, mainly because it's kind of just like the pretty much like the same thing but different objects and stuff like that. But yeah, it pretty much is like another nice seating area, which, and it does also have a door that sort of just like leads you into the sort of area where you can sort of like host a barbecue and just like sit with like a very nice family meal on that very long dining table on the outside area right next to the lake, which I feel like looks super interesting. But yeah, so moving on into the third floor now, we're actually starting off by decorating a very nice and detailed unique sort of like art room, if that makes sense. So it's sort of just like a nice hangout sort of room, and it does also lead to its own sort of balcony area which houses a very nice table tennis area, as well as like a nice jacuzzi and some additional seating area which we'll add later on. And this is also another one of the bedrooms on the third floor as well, which I believe is the final one that I will be showing within this build in particular, which has its own ensuite as well as its own walk-in wardrobe. But if you guys are interested in seeing all the other bedrooms and all the other rooms that I haven't shown within this speed build in particular, you can stick around towards the end of the video to check out the tour. Provide you with pretty much every single room, and you could see like whatever you guys want to in detail. And I do also provide a bird's eye view of like the floor plan of the entire house and the floor, so that you can pretty much just like get an idea of the entire floor plan and like how the layout of the entire home works. But yeah, so for this final bedroom, we're actually utilizing a very nice simple color scheme for this bedroom in particular, as we did with most of the bedrooms throughout this entire home. We're going for this very nice open white sort of beigey sort of birch wood sort of styling textures throughout all of the furniture pieces. And I just wanted to keep to that very nice simple minimalistic feel that I was sort of just like going for throughout the entire build. And it does also have its own very nice modern looking ensuite with the floating vanity sort of like sink area, as well as like a very nice fancy bathtub. And yeah, just like an overall very spacious bathroom in my opinion. And I sort of just like ended up changing it into a darker sort of color swatch, mainly because we had a lot of that bright theme going on throughout the entire home. So I feel like it kind of just like made it feel a bit more unique by adding some like darker wood tones to certain parts of the bedrooms. And for this walk-in wardrobe area as well, we also went with a darker wood tone as well, just to like differentiate it from the rest of the bedrooms that we have going on throughout this entire build as well. And yeah, just like added some additional sort of clothing pieces just to like house those empty hangers, and just like added a very nice huge mirror there just to like make it look super fancy. And it just like worked out with having that very nice dark brass color that I had going on throughout the frame of the mirror, which I feel like ended up working super nicely. And then I just went around the entire home and pretty much just like added some additional details that I feel like was kind of necessary, such as like adding some like nice wall hanging lights, some sconces, just like changing up all of the lights so they're not all like saucer lights and stuff like that, and just like adding some additional details for the balcony areas. And I went around pretty much all of the balconies that we have throughout the entire home and sort of just like added some additional details onto it, such as like some additional seating areas, and just like added some greenery on top of it just to make it feel a bit more lively. And yeah, that is pretty much it for this entire speed build. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think by leaving a like and subscribing, and comment down below if you guys like this build or if you guys didn't. I'd love to know your thoughts and suggestions down below. And I do also have a bunch more videos like this on the channel if you guys are interested in things like these. So if you guys do need more builds and whatnot for your game, make sure to check out my channel, and I do also provide a lot more of those on the channel. And yeah, so thank you so much for watching again, and I'll see you guys in my next video.